Do, 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 do. Hi, everybody. How are we doing today? I hope you don't mind that I put an old thing on. It doesn't make any sense. That I put an old screen card on. I'm sure nobody was personally offended by that. And if you were, you know, don't know what you want me to say to you. How are we today? Are we all good? I can tell from the sheer quantity of you once again that it's a good one, that it's going to be a fun one. How is everything? How are the kids? You know, something that people don't ask me enough about is small talk. You know, how do you keep a conversation rolling? And that's it, really. You say things like, "How's the weather?" You know, what have you been up to lately? What's happening in your world? Now, you may have noticed that the environment has certainly changed for today, because today we're going to be doing some writing. Now, in the last class, in the last session, we did some very interesting stuff. We've talked about the passive voice. What did we talk about in the last class? We talked about the conditionals. That's right. If anybody has any questions relative to those topics, I will be happy to take them today. But hopefully, the plan for today is as follows. We're going to do some criteria. We're going to discuss the criteria for the writing exams, talk about what it might mean. And then we're also going to discuss something very beautiful. We're going to see if we can do some example questions. Now, you might be thinking, well, Emily, I'm not ready to do that yet. To which I would say, shush, you'll be fine. I believe in you. And if you have any doubts, if you have any questions, leave a message in the comments or just say hello, Say hello. It's not a difficult thing to do. If you're feeling super scared to do so, hello, right? Nice and easy. Well, anyways, if you want to tell me about, how you're feeling these days and what you've been up to and all of these different things and start trauma dumping, then please do. But for the time being, we are actually going to focus on some beautiful writing technique today. I have 3 different writings. 2 of them are B2 Cambridge, because I think that the majority of my students are B2 Cambridge students. However, I do have one very pretty. You might be getting anxiety just looking at this, but I do have one very pretty part 1 IELTS writing, which you might be thinking, oh my goodness, please don't do this to me. But don't worry, we're going to work through it together. To be completely honest, when it comes to IELTS in Cambridge, if I had to choose which one that I am more familiar with as a teacher, um, it would be Cambridge, because I think that the majority of my students take a specific level exam just because they want to very explicitly say, okay, I have a B2 or I have a C1. But the IELTS is a bit more open ended. And actually, this is a topic that we can talk about today if you did have some doubts on which one you should take, which one you should do. So maybe that would be a good idea to talk about at some point. Let's talk about it later on. But for now, we're going to get on with some writing business. So, okay, I'll be keeping an eye open on chat. So, yeah, as always, if you feel doubtful, if you feel worried, if you feel that I'm going too fast, you can say something. You can be like, Emily, shut up. Wait a second. I want to clarify something. Okay. So, yeah, let's get started. Again, as an English teacher, the level of feedback that I get from these lives is generally positive. I hope that in the future, perhaps more people will attend so that people can actually ask questions. But that, I think that is also just a matter of, a lack of um, advertisement on my side as a teacher. So, again, tell your friends, tell your family. What do you mean your friends and family are all English speakers and they don't need any support? Now, that's the problem that I have. I tell all of my friends and family to join these lives, but they're all English. So that's tough. This is a tough life I lead. Anyways, so let's get right into it then, shall we? A lot of my students do not like writing. I think it's probably their least favorite of all of the exam parts. Um, why is that? It's because you have to write for extensive amounts of time. These writing exams, I would say, generally speaking, are about 90 minutes, generally, in total, right? I think we could probably say that. They are long, right? And normally you get 2 pieces of writing that you have to complete. I would like to say that the difference is that one is formal and one is informal, but that's not necessarily true. You can have lots of different types. For example, if you do the Cambridge exam, the essay is obligatory, mandatory. You have to do it. But in the second part, you have a choice of 3 options. And, well, let's write them down, shall we? Just so that you're clear. I do love making tables. If you guys have attended these lives before, then you'll know what I'm about. I love a good table. So part 1 is normally an essay. Part 2 could be an article, could be an email, could be a report. Okay, these are the main 3, perhaps I would say. And when we talk about emails as well, we talk about formal and informal. Okay. Yes. And also, if you are a little higher up and you're doing a C1 level, you might find proposals also appear at this part of the exam. That is something that can show up. If you are doing first for schools, though, which is to say that you are 18 or younger and you're still in school, it's highly likely that you're not going to get something like a report or a proposal that is very heavily connected to work or business. I would say that most people who get these types of questions, it's because they're an adult and they're doing like the adult exam. Okay. So that's Cambridge. That's the beauty of Cambridge, right? Now, when I talk about IELTS today, like I said, Cambridge is my bread and butter. But as a teacher, you have to know a lot of different exam providers. IELTS is definitely one of them for me. But I think that I would say that I'm most familiar with Cambridge, Language Cert 2, Trinity, the Trinity certificate. What else? Ah, yes, yes, yes. I remember many years ago, for some reason, everybody was doing the official school of languages, the Escuela Oficial de Idiomas, here in Spain. Everybody was doing that exam. I think it's because it was a little bit more better value for money. Um, and it was a really good exam, to be honest. I think it's one of the best exams out there. But nowadays, it's not really the same. So, part 1 is normally some kind of analysis of a diagram or a process, or maybe some text. It could just be a piece of text, but that's very rare. Normally, it's something that is numbers based, and you have to take the most important details, summarize them, write about them, maybe even offer a little bit of speculation about those numbers, but not necessarily. And then in part 2, you have an essay. Surprise! I know, it's such a shock, isn't it? These essays, they just keep coming back to bite us. I think the reason for this is because lots and lots of examiners and lots of companies decided many, many years ago that there is an important difference between what is known as written communication and written expression. you know. Written communication implies a specific audience. You have a certain person that you are writing a letter to, or you have a report that you are writing for your boss, or the written piece of work that you are producing has a purpose. It is going to somebody, and it is going for a specific reason to that person. Whereas written expression, um, it's not that it doesn't have an audience, but when you write an essay, um, the audience could be anybody, right? And I think that because the audience could be anybody, really your style of writing is what's most important here. So it's what the examiners tend to sort of look for in these types of exams. So yeah, it's a little weird that this written communication, written expression thing, but IELTS likes to kind of create this divide. I know Cambridge definitely does. The Escuela Oficial de Idiomas also creates this kind of divide between what is written communication to another person or to a very specific audience, and written expression, which is like talking to a wall, right? Writing to a wall, perhaps. So yeah, that's it really. I think maybe an important detail to mention as well is that if you're doing B2 for each of these writings, you have to write 140 to 190 words. In part, oh god, I really have to play on my memory here. If anybody has to correct me, please do, because I honest to God cannot remember. I believe that part one of the IELTS exam is 150 to 200 words. And then part two is a little chunkier. It's 250 plus words, I believe. Now, I would like to set aside some concerns that some of you may be having, thinking about this concept of, well, what does it mean to um, speak many words? 1 minute, let me just check my microphones. Cool. Sometimes I have to check the thing's still working. But yes, what does it mean to write this many words in a writing? Well, I think mainly, and this is, you can check this in the Cambridge. What's the name of it? They created this big like leaflet that you can read if you're taking these exams. But effectively, so long as you stay within the limit, you're okay. Uh, but there is no penalty for writing more than what has been suggested here. So, for example, with the C1 exam, a lot of students are kind of getting to this point where they get to 260 words and then they want to write more. And a lot of my students say to me, well, Emily, but what if I write 280 words? Or what if I write 265 words? Emily, I wrote one extra word. What do I do? Nobody is going to shoot you for this. You're not going to be disqualified. Your grade is not going to be reduced as well. But Cambridge has actually come out and made a statement on what it would mean to write more than the limit, the upper limit. If you write too little or too few words, um, it is certain, according to Cambridge, that you have not fulfilled all of the requirements in the prompt, in the task. If you have written too many words, it is certain, according to Cambridge, that your message that you are providing is not as maximally coherent as it could be, which effectively means that if you're not being coherent um, enough, that maybe you would lose some points in terms of organization. I think that Cambridge examiners here are perhaps assuming that you might be repeating the same ideas on many occasions. They could also be implying that you are not structuring your answer appropriately. Okay, so for that reason, all of these things combined sort of indicate that staying within the word limit is the best option. If you go a little bit over, nobody's going to kill you. The Queen or the King, sorry, the King, forgive me, is not going to send you a personal message saying that you have besmirched the face of the English language. You'll be all right. Okay? So, finally, after 15 minutes of yap, let's talk about the criteria. So, firstly, I think what would be a really good idea is to talk about the Cambridge stuff initially, and then we will go into our sweet and beautiful IELTS stuff, which is actually quite similar, really. So, let's come down here. I'm going to make another table. I know. When you get the content for this particular writing live session, you will be happy to know that it's all incredibly well organized because it's just a bunch of tables. I apologize, but really it's for your own good if you think about it. So, what I like to do whenever I do any kind of writing with any of my students is establish what the rules are, what the criteria is. Because if you don't establish that first, then a lot of students don't really know how they are supposed to satisfy the examiner, how they are supposed to impress the person who is marking their writing. So I think it's great to be familiar with the criteria first, and then we can go into using your own style, using your own words, being fancy, using big words, using grammatical structures that sound cool, all of these different things. So, what I like to do for each of these different criteria is ask myself a question. When I've completed a writing, I'll ask myself 4 questions, one for each of the criteria, which will help me decide if I did a good enough job. Okay? So for content, the question is simple. Did I answer every part of the question? Now, this is a really easy thing to do, and I'm going to show you super, super quickly. Sorry, I know that you can't see that part of the screen. My bad. I'm going to show you a little example here. We can see one of these. Oh, not that one. This one. This one's good. This one. This one. Okay. So take a look at this essay here. Sorry, I have to give it sound effects, otherwise it's no fun. So in your English class, you have been talking about hobbies and free time. Now your English teacher has asked you to write an essay. I'm sorry if this is very small for people. I'll make it bigger in a second. Write your essay using all of the notes and giving reasons for your points of view. So we're being explicitly instructed to do very, very certain things here. So we have to make sure that we answer with the 3 points that are given to us. We have to invent our own point too. We have to answer the question, young people spend too much of their free time playing video games. Do you agree? So we have to say, do we agree or do we disagree? We also have to write an essay. So if you decide that you're going to just draw a picture that represents the person playing video games, then obviously that's not going to be a sufficient answer to the question. And then finally, is there anything else that we need to mention? Perhaps, yes, we need to give reasons for our points of view, which is something that the examiner has explicitly asked us to do here. So ultimately, if you are, any decent examiner worth their salt, if you see that a student has done all of these things, they have written an essay, they have offered their opinion as to whether or not they agree or disagree, they have made a paragraph about things you can learn from video games, they've made a paragraph about doing exercise, and they've made a paragraph about their own idea. And then they've given reasons for those ideas too and those thoughts that they have. Congratulations, you get 5 out of 5 in the content grade. Big ups to you. Okay, nice. Let's move. Don't do that. Oh, my bad. Forgive me. This is all new to me. I'm an old lady at heart. It's all very complicated. So that's the content grade. I'm just going to make this a little smaller. Now, hopefully, you can all see that later on. Okay, we're just going to have to pray to God that that is going to work. Might just make it a little bit bigger. That's not the right page. That's the right page. I know I'm a genius. So, in terms of communicative achievement, now let's talk about one of the very, very big and important criteria, which is uh, how do you provide tone to your writing? What do you say? What do you do? How do you behave in an essay context? So, in this particular case, communicative achievement, I think that the question that we would be asking is um, did I answer the question in the correct tone? I think that's the key word here. What do we mean by tone? Really, we're just talking about formality levels. We're talking about specific expressions that help us structure a response. So, for example, in an email, sometimes it specifically says that you don't need to include an email address in your writings, which is actually fine, you know. But there are plenty of things that you can do in an email or in a letter that indicate a certain level of um, emailiness. So, for example, you wouldn't start an email by saying, do this. No, you would say, Dear so and so, dear John, I'm writing to you because of this. Could you please do this? Kind regards, Emily, right? You wouldn't start off the bat by saying, I need you to do this now. This is not a phone call. This is not a WhatsApp text message. This is an email. Even if it is an email or a letter or whatever, right? It still has to have a specific structure. If you fail to do this, the examiner may perceive your inability to kind of produce a normal email or a normal essay as poor communication skills, which is something that we are trying to avoid. Okay, going back to our essay, we discussed before that essays are all about written expression. So, specifically in the context of an essay, we might want to be a little bit more formal. We might want to avoid contractions. So, instead of saying I'm or your or I don't know, he's instead of he has, you know, then you would say I am, you are, he has, right? Another thing, this is a curiosity. I know that maybe some people get a little bit crazy about phrasal verbs, but phrasal verbs are more commonly used in informal contexts and not in formal ones. So if you are using phrasal verbs, you're more likely to use them talking to your friend than you're going to use them writing in an essay. Okay? Depends on the context, but generally speaking, that's true. Okay, so let's continue. Yeah, essays are tough in terms of communicative achievement, but really, so long as you express your opinion and continue to repeat that opinion throughout, you'll do pretty well in terms of communicative achievement. Make the message clear, and that's a really, really important thing. As you can see, content is probably the easiest criteria to get 5 out of 5 in. All right, this one's a funny one. Organization. I love this one. I love this criteria because I think everybody just overthinks it so hard. I want to tell you an embarrassing story, and it's a true story too. And it happened to me at university. When I was at university, I did German, and I didn't have the most positive time learning German. Mainly because I was already learning German in Spain. So I was already learning my third language and my second language, which it was really good for my second language, but not necessarily for my third language. And at this point, I had been a teacher for many years, and I did a writing. My German teacher gave me a writing to do, and I was like, "Oh, this is fantastic!" I spent an hour on it, handed it back to him, and I remember going home that day and thinking, I am the best. All of this effort, all of this hard work, I'm a genius. And then my German teacher came back to me in a few days and he said, Emily, that was the worst piece of writing I think I've ever read. I was like, no, what do you mean? I worked so incredibly hard for this piece of writing. How dare you say that I was so bad. And then he handed it back to me and he said, "Find a full stop. Find one of these. A full stop. Find one. I can see lots and lots of commas, but I don't see a single full stop in this writing." And I read it, and sure enough, he was right. I wrote about 300 words and I didn't put a single full stop in the whole writing. And yeah, I was incredibly embarrassed. For some reason, this always happens when we go from our first language to our second language. It happened to me at the beginning of my degree at university in Spanish too. I thought that I was really good at writing in Spanish and that I didn't have anything to worry about. But then when I had to write a project, I wrote like a full page without any full stops, any punctuation whatsoever. So I know it may seem a little bit obvious and perhaps even fundamental, but punctuation is key, not just commas, but also full stops or periods if you're American, right? Brackets can also be helpful. You can even stick a semicolon in there if you're feeling brave enough. But don't forget things like exclamation points or question marks. And obviously, and I'm saying obviously because I don't think it is actually that obvious for many students, apostrophes. My goodness. Something that I find horrifically painful is reading students who have written things like he has or shiz, she's or he's. You need an apostrophe there, right? That is a big one. This is another thing that my German teacher said to me when he handed me my writing bag. He said, "Emily, where are the full stops?" The second thing he said was, "Emily, where do the paragraphs start and where do they end? This is one big block of text." And it's really funny because for many years I had said exactly the same thing to my students, but then when the focus is placed on you to not put text into one big block and call it a day, yeah, you don't realize how difficult that actually is. It's really, really tough. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do to write in paragraphs. But just as a little reassurance, if you are already doing quite well with your paragraphs, if you find it easy to separate introduction, body text, and conclusion, then you're probably already set up for high organization grade, just because a lot of examiners see paragraphs and they go, "Oh, hey, this student knows what they're talking about. Thank goodness," right? So yeah, paragraphs are a huge part of the organization criteria. Okay. And then finally, another thing in organization that is a big one is connectors. Now, things like and but and because are fundamental in the English language, or so, then, yeah, all fundamental, all incredibly important, all like cornerstones of the English language that you probably learned when you were beginning, when you were baby bones when it comes to this topic. However, I think that the curiosity when it comes to connectors is when you get into these higher levels, when you get into C1, um, you know, C2 even. So when we talk about connectors, we're not just talking about using things like however or uh, but or and also and things like that. Maybe we could say things like at the same time, which is actually a really interesting way of saying however, right? Although, this is a nice one. Spell it properly though, not like me. Despite. Don't get despite and in spite of confused. I have a lot of students who write despite of this. That's wrong. It's in spite of or despite. And despite doesn't need the word of. Okay. So I could say something like, I went outside despite the rain. I went outside in spite of the rain. Both of those are fine. Okay. So yeah, organization is a really big topic, but um, you can handle it quite nicely if you just put things in paragraphs. You can handle it very well if you use beautiful connectors. Okay. And then finally, language. So, language is divided into two topics. One of them is grammar, and the other one is vocabulary. I know it's a massive surprise, isn't it? I know, I know. I did not see it coming myself. But there are two things that you can say when you talk about grammar in particular. One of them is variety. Um, Use a lot of different types of tenses. If you have the opportunity to do so, the same applies to the speaking. Try to use whatever the examiner gives you. So, if we kind of go back to this essay question that we have, young people today, so a lot of the answers are going to be in the present simple tense, right? But that doesn't stop you from talking about possibilities in the future. Children could go blind from playing too many video games. They could lose all of their money spending Robux. Is it Robux? Did I just make that up? I might have just made that up. What's the one? What's the Fortnite one? I don't know. Maybe if I say like these kinds of words, the algorithm will pick me up and all the Fortnite kids will come and learn some English with me. Robux, V-Bucks, that's it, V-Bucks. Fortnite bucks. Come on, guys. Come on, kids. Okay, Emily's lost her mind already. This is not good. Anyways, what was the point that I was making? Ah, yes, variety. Yes, children could. So when we use this type of grammar, this type of variety, instead of just limiting ourselves to the present simple tense, just because this is the tense that we are most familiar with, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you do that. Have some respect for yourself and try some new um, grammatical techniques, some new grammatical structures. Variety is often more important than accuracy. Accuracy is the next one, right? Accuracy is our next topic here. Um, okay, if you make grammatical mistakes, it isn't the end of the world. And I'd actually say that a lot of students who get 100% in their exams oftentimes get um, a few mistakes in their writings. That's not a problem at all. That's definitely not the issue here. I think the problem is that if you make like loads and loads of mistakes of the same type, and especially if those mistakes are representative of a lower level. So, for example, if you get she and he confused in your writing on multiple occasions, or if you say she have instead of she has, um, poor conjugations in basic tenses, um, one or two mistakes, or not even that, a few mistakes doesn't ruin your grade. But it depends on the level of the mistakes. Okay, it really does. Then finally, let's talk about vocabulary. Now, this is another thing that I would like to do a bit of myth busting on. A lot of my students think that when they write an essay or when they do a specific email or a report, that they have to use very sophisticated vocabulary. But you have to think about it like this. Phrasal verbs are also considered sophisticated, but you don't need phrasal verbs in formal writings most of the time. So, surely you don't always need sophisticated vocabulary. And actually, in many cases, sophisticated vocabulary doesn't always fit. It depends on the context, right? It depends on what's being discussed in this particular case, what we're looking at here. Okay? It really, really heavily depends. So, in terms of vocabulary, what is important then? It is true that if you can make a really specific expression connected to a topic, that's awesome. That's great. But equally, it doesn't have to be something that is really, really high level. It just has to be relevant. And when I say relevant, I simply mean connected to the topic. Connected to the topic. That's it. If you can do that, then you're probably fine. You just have to make sure that when it comes to when you're writing your final essay, when you're checking those words at the end, that they are actually connected to the topic and you didn't just shove a phrasal verb in there for the sake of argument just to try and impress the examiner, because things like that aren't necessarily going to impress the examiner. In English, we call this shoehorning. Shoehorning. It's when you like force something into another situation or into a topic, or in this case into a writing, to make it fit, but it still doesn't fit, right? If something looks forced, if something appears forced in a writing, and it doesn't answer the question, and you're just shoehorning the answer because you really, really hope that you can get a high level or sophisticated expression in there. I think especially if you are a B2 student, relevance is more important than sophistication, right? Um, a funny story. This is a true story. I had a student recently who wrote this in an essay. Absolute crap. Absolute crap. I think the question was whether or not she agreed that like teenagers are addicted to their phones. And she said it was absolute crap. Um, I think that perhaps this is it's a great collocation, right? It's a fantastic collocation, because that's how we would speak. But this is spoken English. That's the problem. It's not written English. Equally, crap is another way of saying poo poo. Um, so it's not really appropriate, and that's a shame because it's really funny to hear. Right? If the examiner in the speaking exam asks you what your opinion is about a certain thing and you say that's absolute crap, playing Fortnite is absolute crap, that's great, but when you're writing you have to really, really make sure that even if it is something that is opinionated, like an essay, like a review, sometimes like an email or an article, that you don't swear or that you don't use inappropriate language. Just try to keep it to what you know with the words that you do know that are appropriate, and try to make that message come across in that way. Okay, cool. So, something that I like to do, this is one of my tricks as well. This is the 3-read trick that I would like to tell you about today. Whenever I do a writing, I read it 3 times before I confidently move on to the next activity or hand my writing back into the examiner. The first read that I do is just for grammar. Actually, sometimes I do it the other way around and I start with answering the question. But for now, we'll say that the first read is just for grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes as well. Easy things. Examiners are not necessarily harsh on spelling mistakes. They don't necessarily care. But sometimes they can be picky, especially if the spelling mistake affects the grammar. Um, Maybe like the incorrect use of an apostrophe, for instance. The second time I read is for content. Did I answer all the questions? It's an important question to ask yourself. Did you actually do that, or did you just imagine that you did? Be harsh. Be harsh on yourself. Because sometimes we like to believe that we've done something perfectly well when we actually have not. So yeah, be strict. Be strict, be mean. Okay? And then finally, the last thing that I would say is that you need to check one more time for your tone. Check once again just to make sure that you're writing in the appropriate way. If you're writing a message to a friend, does it sound friendly or does it sound like you're saying really weird things to your friend? I want you to really put yourself in that scenario and say, okay, I was supposed to explain to my friend all of the places to visit in Madrid. Did it sound like I was giving friendly recommendations or offering to meet up? Or did it sound like I was threatening them? Or like I was responding like ChatGPT would, you know? You have a personal element that you have to cater to, and that is part of communicative achievement. Okay, so that's what I like to do. I like to read everything 3 times. That's something that really helps me. So, from what I can see, it looks like we don't have a lot of time to go through this example writing. But I want to give you a little bit of advice on what I would do with this particular essay. So, once again, let's just make it a little bit bigger and then push it down here. Okay, so let's read the essay prompt one more time. In your English class, you have been talking about hobbies and free time. Now your English teacher has asked you to write an essay. Write your essay using all of the reasons or all of the notes, sorry, and giving reasons for your points of view. Write your essay in 140 to 190 words in an appropriate style. Young people today spend too much of their time, free time, my God, I can't read today, free time playing video games. Do you agree? Write about 1. Things that you can learn from video games. 2. Doing exercise. And 3. Your own idea. Okay? So we've already highlighted, which was our step 1, all of the different things that we have to mention. No? Have to identify all of the key areas to mention. So I think that the key thing, the most important thing is, do we agree that young people spend too much time playing video games? So I think that we have to establish our opinion. If it's an essay, we must establish our opinion straight away. So I'm going to say that no. I'm going to just take advantage of this moment to say some keywords that might appeal to the youth so that they come and learn some English. Fortnite is good. Roblox is amazing. Don't forget to subscribe to my Roblox channel. Have you considered playing Fortnite? I don't know. What are the why is it I play video games? Why is it that I can't think of anything else? Ah, yes. Yesterday was Mario Day. My favorite character is Daisy, actually. But happy Mario Day, guys. Um so obviously this is a great topic for me. I am compromised because my opinion about video games is incredibly high. I love Mario and Sonic. Sonic's my favorite. Zelda's good too. What's the best one? So it's hard to decide. There are so many good IPs for video games, you know? Probably Zelda. Yeah. So, I digress. Sorry, I'm going on for too long. I was kind of hoping that that might work. Maybe I'll have to make this an ASMR channel and just start whispering my answers instead. Get one of those really sensitive microphones. Start whispering about grammar. Everybody, come to my grammar channel. It's no surprise to me why people don't want to come to this channel. You know, learning English. Blech, gross. Anyway, so we've identified the key areas that we have to mention, but we haven't identified. Somebody said persona in chat. You're so right. You said, I can't believe I forgot. Can't believe I forgot. Shame on me. I should be ashamed of myself. Yeah, persona is super right. What do I have anything persona related at hand? No, no. To be fair, speaking of hands, this entire lesson is going out of hand. So we have some points that we have to include. The points were things that you can learn from video games and doing exercise. Oops. Video games and exercise. Right? So, yeah, 2 points, and then we have to include our own idea. What is our own idea? What are we going to say? We have to decide what that is before we continue writing our essay. We've identified our opinion, which we think that young people do not spend too much time playing video games. But then we have to decide what point we're going to include. So we've already got learning things. I'm assuming that exercise is kind of a counterpoint, that people are staying at home, they're not going outside, which is a problem, right? They're spending too much time playing video games. Maybe instead of saying that we learn things from video games, just to give a different perspective, if we think that video games are good, maybe we could talk about a sense of community that people have. Oh, Deltarune, of course. Maybe if I just keep talking about Deltarune, all of the Deltarune fanboys will come and practice. Speaking of a sense of community, that's a really good example of a sense of community. The fandom for Undertale and Deltarune is probably one of the most unhealthy fandoms one has ever seen. So sense of community, right? You could actually make that positive or negative depending on what perspective that you take. So yeah, it's completely up to you. So we have our 3 points. Great, good job. What we also have to remember is that we have to give reasons, right? So don't forget to do that. Cool. So first of all, then, every essay has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Our introduction, well, you have to remember that this entire essay is going to be a maximum of 190 words. So how are we going to fit everything into such a small number of words? It's not a lot. So really, your introduction is only going to be, in my opinion, 2 sentences long. I think that the best option is to do one general statement about society or humanity, or the state of affairs. In English, when we talk about the state of affairs, we're talking about the situation of the world. And then I like to do one of these: in this essay I will blah 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 blah, blah sentences. So because we agree, no, sorry, excuse me, because we disagree, don't do what I did and get confused. In this essay, I will explain and analyze why I don't agree that young people spend too much time playing video games. In fact, in this essay, I will analyze why video games are helping young people and maybe they should play them more, right? This is completely okay for me to say that. There's many different shades of this argument that you could take. You could recommend that young people play more video games. You could say that they play the adequate number of video games. You could say that they do, that you agree. Choose. I would argue that if you choose whatever is easier for you, you're probably going to have a better time. So I would say something like this. For B2, I would probably do some kind of boring nowadays sentence. I don't like nowadays sentences, but it's fine. Nowadays, young people are absolutely obsessed with video games. Whether they are online or offline, because you can play both. You can play games online, you can play them offline. And then maybe I want to add an extra sentence about how that might be affecting people. I might say something like, parents are worried about how this is affecting their children. In this essay, I will explain. Oh, you guys can't see this because of that stupid essay question in the way. Sorry. You could have said something, guys. Jeez. I'm just kidding, by the way. It's totally my job to notice that. How about that? Is that better? That might be better. Now you can see. Isn't that great? Forgive me. So, there we go. In this essay, I will explain why I believe that young people should play more video games, as they are very helpful to society. To be honest, I would argue that that's even on a little bit of a longer side, that saying something like, I don't know, young people are obsessed with video games, parents are concerned about this. Perhaps that's something that I would do on a C1 level, but B2 is a little bit lower brow. We don't necessarily need to include this additional sentence. But what we definitely need to do is answer the question in the introduction. Heck yeah. Answer that question, baby. Don't be afraid of doing so either. You know, a lot of my students get a little bit confused when I tell them that they should answer the question as many times as physically possible in a writing. But it is true. You really, really need to make sure that at the end of the introduction, you answer the question. At the end of the first body paragraph, you answer the question again. Second body paragraph, third body paragraph, if there is one. And then the conclusion. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It goes on and on and on and on, baby. You got to keep doing it, because if you don't, then it's just not going to sound very clear. And often what happens with students is that perhaps they lose the plot of what they were saying. They miss key details. They repeat themselves, but then they say that they disagree with their original statement of agreeing, and then it all gets incredibly confusing and mixed up, and we don't want that to happen. So we're going to try and limit it as much as possible. Okay? So, good, good. Very good, everybody. So let's talk about the body. We actually, many moons ago, and by many moons ago, I mean a month ago, we did touch on this topic in the past. We talked about P, which is great, which is, again, yet another excellent expression. Um, P. P can help us structure our essays. So once again, I'm going to come at you with another table, and we're going to P it. We're going to make 3 body paragraphs, which means that for each of the points that we had before, we're going to put each of them in their own paragraph. So the second one was, I know you guys can see it, but I have to keep jumping back and forth. Exercise, that's it. Doing exercise. And then the third topic, I decided that it was going to be a sense of community. People enjoy video games because they get a sense of community. Unfortunately, for any exam level, it's not enough to just say, yes, so I think that you can learn a lot, and then not clarify what you mean by that. Like, what are people learning? What are we learning, guys? Do you have any examples? No? Great. It's not helpful. So that's why we use the P structure. So we take the first letter P, which is the point, and then we take the point, which was already given to us, which is you can learn things from video games, right? You can learn lots of things from video games. You see how I'm not being very specific yet? I don't need to be. Because our next point is evidence. Oh, Emily, you can't possibly say something like that without providing any specific evidence of it. Well, there's plenty of games that you can learn from. For example, I learned how to operate on someone thanks to a video game called Trauma Center. Now, I want to know if any of my Trauma Center fans are out there. If you are, heck yeah. I sincerely doubt it. But if you are a real fan, and if you truly love me, then what you will do is you'll go through all of the shorts that I've ever posted, and you'll notice that a lot of them I use Trauma Center audios in, because it's just such a good game. Okay, it might not be the best example, because you definitely can't operate on somebody in real life, but you could connect. You can still connect that thought, and make something up entirely. You could be like, thanks to a video game like that, I decided to become a doctor or a surgeon or a nurse, right? It's a beautiful way of bringing the whole thing together, which is what we have to do in our final part, which is the explanation. What do we have to do here? We have to connect what we are saying, the point that we are making, the evidence that we are giving, to the original question, which is young people spend too much time playing video games. We always have to keep that statement in mind. So, in this case, how am I going to connect what I've said about what my experience was to the question? How am I going to connect those two things? Well, for me personally, I'm going to say if it weren't for video games, I wouldn't have been able to decide which career option to take. Therefore, which is a great thing to use in your explanation section, young people need to play video games. Right? Great. 100%. I do actually agree with that. You need to, see video games through the eyes of, or you need to see other experiences through the eyes of video games. I remember this is a true story. I played Trauma Center and I did have a very short stint in my childhood where I wanted to be a surgeon. And then I remembered that I am squeamish and I hate blood. So that was pretty short lived and a bit embarrassing on my part, I suppose. But such is life. But yeah, so what we do is we take the point, which is effectively just saying it in a full sentence. We give an example. Now, your evidence could be a personal story. It could also be a statistic that you have made up. This story, I mean, okay, it's not 100% true. I do like Trauma Center, but I didn't actually learn how to operate on someone because I don't know how to operate on people. It's just something I don't know how to do. So we don't have a lot of time left. Let's really quickly do the other points, okay? So our first point, doing exercise. I'm going to again continue to support video games in my argument. So I'm going to say that actually video games can be a great way to get exercise. And what's my evidence for that? Well, actually, you might be thinking, Emily, what is your evidence for that? My evidence is in the form of an example in this case. Recent VR technology has allowed people to play virtual sports inside their homes, which is true. Sports is one. Running away from zombies is technically a sport. Shooting people is a sport. It's not a fun sport, but it's a sport. So that's my evidence. And then again, how am I going to connect that to the question of young people spending too much time playing video games? I'm going to say that if young people can get exercise in this way, then surely video games mustn't be as big of a problem as adults seem to be saying that they are. There you go. I've answered the question again. Okay. And then finally, my own point. Okay. So I have to argue that the sense of community is important for young people. So to make friends and be a part of a community. What's my evidence for that? What's not my evidence for that? Genshin Impact? I don't, forgive me. What other video games have communities? Even if a game is not an MMO, many games have fandoms. Furries. I'm just kidding. Furries are not a part of this. Once again, I'm just trying to say words that get more people to come into the room to practice English. Many games have fandoms, and people love to discuss their favorite games online. Great. Once again, I have provided more examples. Am I not fantastic? But how am I going to connect it back to the question? How am I going to link what I just said back to the question of young people spend too much time playing video games? Do you agree or do you disagree? Well, I am going to say that again, if they love to discuss their favorite video games online, we shouldn't stop young people from making friends and being sociable. Video games have done more than schools to do this in some cases. To do this is a little bit redundant. To more than schools in some cases, maybe we could say in terms of helping students form friendships. Could be cool, right? It's a longer. I always find like your own example, you tend to have to work a little bit harder to make it make sense. But in this case, yeah, I mean, I don't think that I have given the maximum amount of examples that I could possibly give in this case. And I think that many of you will probably think of loads and loads of examples in your own personal lives to use in your writings, to which I would say, please do. Use your own personal examples, use your personal lives, use your own experiences to talk about your own answer to the question. Everybody has a different interpretation. Some of you might have grown up without video games because your parents didn't let you. I know that my mum and dad would probably write this essay in a completely different way. They would probably say something like, there's nothing better than fresh air. You know, nowadays young people don't know how to play. There's plenty of things that you can learn from a video game that you can also learn from a textbook or from a classroom. And sense of community. I mean, have you ever heard of a football club? Have you ever heard of going to practice a new thing after school, like a sports club or a chess club? You know, everybody has a different perspective. There is no incorrect choice when you're doing a writing. Okay? So we have our introduction, which is a couple of sentences. We have our 3 Ps, which, again, like I said, everybody will have a different interpretation. And then finally, we have our conclusion. Now, I like to make sure that our conclusion ends in a nice and pretty way, which is, for all of the reasons mentioned above, because at this point, we've probably absolutely smashed it. Bang. You restate your opinion. You make sure that whatever it is that you are saying, you make it clear once again. I know that at this point, a lot of you may be thinking, Emily, I have already given my opinion 4 times. In my conclusion, why is it important to repeat the same thing? It's because you don't really have anything else to say in the conclusion. You know, you don't have to paraphrase in a massive way. In fact, if anything, the most important part of your writing is the body. The introduction is important too, just to get things started, but your conclusion, it is just a way to end the essay. Okay, and that's all we're doing here. So a great expression like for all of the reasons mentioned above is a good way to do that. All right. Um, in Spanish, you would say something like rematar, where it's like re-killing it. We're just killing the same topic over and over. We're beating it. We're beating it to death. And that's what you're doing here. Okay. So ultimately, my lesson plan was to go through 2 examples minimum, and we have only talked about 1. But I'm not disappointed here because we were able to talk about a really good example of an essay plan. For those of you who are doing exams, I wouldn't necessarily recommend writing a whole essay as preparation. In fact, I probably would recommend writing an essay plan like this because it takes less time and it helps you structure yourself a little bit better. Remember that each of these would be their own paragraph. This is a paragraph, this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph. In between each of these sentences, you're probably going to see some more connectors, like for this reason, therefore, you know. Some people might put on the one hand, on the other hand, if you want to introduce a counterpoint, you definitely can. The only thing that I would say about introducing a counterpoint is that you have to make sure that whatever you say at the end of that paragraph still follows the opinion of your overall essay. Okay, so um, yeah, if you agree that young people should uh, play more video games like I do, then if you introduce a counterpoint that says actually we should go outside, at the end of the paragraph, you should probably say something like, despite the fact that some people would say that we do need to go outside, video games allow us to live in a different world, which is actually more valuable. You know, you have to make sure that you come back to that idea effectively. Okay, so that's all I have to say today. We've gone over a little bit, but really, I mean, we've covered quite a lot. So I hope that the recording of this will be useful to some of you. I know that some people have been watching the recordings. The only thing that I would say to anybody watching the recording for this particular live session is I'm sorry for that 1 minute where I just started saying things like Robux and V-Bucks into the microphone to see if more people would join. That might have been a little bit desperate on my part. But I can see that a lot of people have been watching our videos recently. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your consistent viewership and support of the channel. If you enjoyed this video and if you found it useful in any meaningful way in preparation for your exams, please subscribe. You know, if we end up disappointing you in the end, you can unsubscribe and it's not a problem. um yeah, that's all really. I'll hang around for a couple more minutes to see if anybody's got a question or maybe a thought or a declaration that they want to make. But other than that, that's all. So I'm actually gonna mess around with this stuff, see if I can like, now that we're just here for fun, you know, we're just here for like for fun stuff. I'm gonna see if I can change. Get rid of that. Ooh, look at that. Look at this. Hey. Whoa. You got, if you got, that is still true, by the way. If you do have a question about English grammar, just go ahead and ask. Gonna get rid of that essay question. Is there any other images? That one? No, you can still subscribe. But yeah, you know, I'm gonna be here for a few minutes. Many years of experience in this brain of mine. So if you do have a question, even if it's about something stupid, like I don't know, is there such thing as a stupid topic in English grammar? I don't think so. I don't think so. Unless you're English and you say like, Emily, what's the difference between should have and should of? And then you deserve a slap, you know? Should of, it doesn't exist. For context, it doesn't exist. What are y'all's favorite color? Anybody got one? I'm gonna, right, you know what? What is your favorite color? Does anybody have a favorite color? I don't have one. I have a favorite color. Gray. Gray's nice. I feel like I should probably say blue and orange. I dream in blue and orange. That is definitely true. But these colors are not my favorite colors. um, pink. Pink's a good one. Yeah, pink's cute. Pink's now. But what kind of pink though? Light pink or hot pink? You know, because there's a big difference. He just deleted his own message, you know. That's a sign for me to clock out, I think. Clearly, clearly. Oh, blue is it? Oh, what kind of blue? What kind of blue, Mr. Hastings? Is it light blue or dark blue? Or royal blue? Or grammar police blue? Light pink, light pink. See, light pink, I agree. Don't apologize, it just made me laugh. Hot pink is a little bit too crazy for me. I do not like hot pink. But I love light pink. It's really nice. You know what's in at the minute is sage. I don't know if you guys have seen these kind of boring ass colors. Sage sucks. Sage is like it's like green, but halfway there. You know, it's almost there, but it's not good enough. In my opinion, it's not good enough. I suppose I can make myself a little bit bigger. Ho, look at that. Sorry, hate to scare you. Hate to scare you. Sky blue. What do people mean when they say sky blue though? Because like there's like pastel blue. You know, there's pastel blue, and then there's like a little bit more medium kind of blue. You know, what about orange? What about what about red? What about YouTube red? Wait, isn't YouTube red a like a channel? What's y'all's opinion on yellow? I used to hate the color yellow so much, and then all of a sudden, I really love it. Like it's really grown on me. Can't wear it, can't wear it for the life of me. Absolutely not. But it looks very nice on other people. I'm a big fan. Just love it to bits. Mustard yellow. I remember when I was a little bit younger, I used to wear mustard yellow a lot of the time, and I thought it suited me. Um, and perhaps I was right, but I don't think it would suit me now. I don't think so. That's a boring question. What's your favorite animal? That's a real question. Flowers get away with yellow. All right, all right. Well, I was a lovely flower when I was younger. Okay. I have had many a different favorite animal throughout my childhood. I liked dinosaurs. No, not dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs, but I like tigers first, and then giraffes, and now I think I'm back to tigers. Then you were yellow. Oh, wait. I have to Google. You say haldi, haldi. I want to see. Haldi. Oh, I see. Yeah, like it's like a turmeric kind of color. No, that's pretty. That's pretty. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. That's good. It's like a mustardy. That's nice. Pandas too. Elite choice. Elite choice, really. For being honest, pandas are sick. Pandas are really cool. What's another one? What's another good one? I love ducks. I shouldn't because ducks are a bit weird. They have strange proclivities. But ducks are cool though. I'm a big fan of ducks. I saw a duck when I was in the UK recently. I saw a duck, and I don't know what type of duck it was. And I'm actually a big fan of birds. I'm a bird watcher. It's one of my many hobbies. And by many, I mean two hobbies that I have. I watch birds, and I make soap. Those are my two hobbies. If anybody was curious, that's one of the two things I do. Three things: teach English, watch birds, make soap. Check it out. That's me. That's me in a nutshell. And yeah, I was in the UK, and I was walking with one of my friends, and we saw a duck, and it was brown, but not just brown. It wasn't just a mallard, like one of those typical ducks that you see. It was like orange, and it was cool. It was amazing. It was like the coolest like duck I've ever seen in my life. Anyway. I digress. I feel like I've been talking too long, and it's been going so well, and I don't want to bore you with more talk about ducks. But I do love ducks. Thank you. You call me cool. Am I cool? Is that cool? Is it cool to make soap and watch birds? I disagree. No, I'm just kidding. I do agree. I support my hobbies and anybody who does the same hobbies. Bird watchers unite. But anyways, I'm gonna leave you alone for now. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I hope you know what? Maybe at some point in the future we'll just do a chat. We'll do a vocabulary chat. And if people come with questions, then they've got questions and that's that. That might be kind of a good way to do a future lesson. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. It's something that I might do in the future. But for the time being, I've been on here for an hour screaming at you about how to do writings. Um, the what's the word? The recording of this will be up soon. I'll post it as soon as I can. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I hope that you had a good time. I hope you learned something. Um, and yeah, if you've got any questions, leave me a comment, ladies and gents. All right. But for now, I mean, I can't think of anything else to say other than ducks are great. Represent. I'm gonna go now. See you later.